Good evening, everyone. The waiting room is now empty. I think everyone has joined us. So we will make a start. Welcome to the third event in the series Towards Another Architecture. This has been organised by the Farrell Centre, which is the new public centre for architecture and cities in Newcastle in the UK, and it's in collaboration with the School of Architecture, Planning and Landscape at Newcastle University. I've at the previous two events in this series, I've given a little bit of a preamble to explain the idea behind it. And so some of you will be familiar with this, no doubt, but for those of you who aren't, I will give a very, very brief overview of where this series comes from. The starting point is the realization that it is now 100 years, over 100 years, since the first essays that would later form Le Corbusier's Vers une Architecture were published in L'Esprit Nouveau. Modern life demands and is waiting for a new kind of plan, both for the house and the city, Le Corbusier wrote. And today, I think it's fair to say, we live at another pivotal moment for architecture and, of course, for the wider world. And this series emerges from the contention that what we need to make sense of this moment is not a new architecture, as Le Corbusier was popularly mistranslated as advocating, but another one, an architecture that is not bound to a single vision or future, but is diverse, pluralist, and is capable of sustaining multiple conversations about the active role that architects might play in the world. So the series invites a number of practitioners and thinkers working in a broad range of fields and geographies to reflect on this pivotal moment and put forward their own visions for another architecture. The format is a simple one. It's 30 minutes presentation followed by 30 minutes Q&A. So please have your questions ready. Last week, we heard from Alice Brownfield of Peter Barber Architects in Park W. And this evening, I'm delighted to introduce Gonzalo Herrero Delicado, who is an architect, a curator, and educator based in London, whose work explores ecology and digital culture through the lens of design, architecture, and art. He's currently curator for the new Museum of the Future in Dubai and is combining that with being an associate lecturer at Central St. Martin's. Previously, he was curator at the Royal Academy of Arts in London, where he curated eco-visionaries and invisible landscapes, among many other projects, events, and displays. He's had a number of curatorial positions, too numerous to mention, and he is also a writer on architecture and design, editor of 2 books, and a frequent commentator in the architectural press and beyond. And finally, as an architect, he's worked at Lacaton and Farrell, Pritzker Prize winning architects, of course. So please join me in welcoming Gonzalo.
Thank you, Owen. Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here today and to introduce this new lecture. That it's kind of a compilation of like many thoughts and projects that I have been developing over the last years in some of the institutions that you mentioned. So I'm gonna start. I hope everyone can see my my screen. Certain screen now. Yeah, hopefully everyone can see my screen now. And yeah, the title for this lecture is Curating for a Complex World, Architecture in the Age of the Metaverse. And I would like to start this lecture referring to Karl Marx, who in 1884 published The Strange Labor, was one of his manuscripts where he examined the alienated labor. An alienated labor that was the result of capitalist society that he identified in 4 different types of alienation. The first one was an alienation from ourselves, an alienation from other people, alienation from work, and alienation from nature. 4 types of alienation that I consider are incredibly relevant still today. Perhaps these 4 forms of alienation were power by the first industrial revolution and later on like continued increasing this alienation in the second industrial revolution. Obviously, all of them like driven by the technological advancements that were related to these two revolutions. Technology is something that we often rely on to drive the future. We are always relying on technological advancements to shape how the future might look and what are the next steps that we have to do. But technology itself is like moving at a pace today that we've never seen before. And it's important that we question technology in itself. As Cedric Price said, technology is the answer, or might be one of the answers, but what were the questions? So it's important that we reflect on like the impact that technologies and many different technologies that I'm gonna describe in this lecture are having on ourselves, on society, and also on the planet. One of the first technology that I would like to address is social media. Social media in its many different forms and platforms. Perhaps many of you, when you look at this aerial view of this mansion in California, you might not know whose house is this. It looks quite large home with a back garden, with a pool, and a quite traditional architecture, I would say, but very typical in suburban areas of the East Coast in the States. However, if I show you some pictures of the interior, you might many of you might be more familiarized and recognize some of this picture because it was one of the houses that was most posted and reposted on Instagram in 2020. And that is the house designed by Axel Verboord and Claudio Silvestrin. Sorry about that, that is the dishwasher. And is the house designed for Kanye West and Kim Kardashian. This is a house that it's extremely designed for being promoted through social media, following like very specific, neutral and white aesthetics and minimalist aesthetics, and combined with like certain like icons of furniture design. What we see here is the product of something that it's been purely designed for Instagram, as I said, but barely like we can imagine how it might be like living here. Is a house that we can feel very alienated from, even if it had like this kind of almost sublime beauty that we can barely understand.
What's the meanest thing your child has said to you? Every time I get into some kind of disagreement with my daughter, North, she thinks this is a dig to me. And she'll say, your house is so ugly. It's all white. Who lives like this? She just thinks it like gets to me. And
yeah, as the little West Kardashian said, like it's a house that even if it works incredibly well in social media, it's a house that from an architectural point of view can be like questionable in certain ways, but we need to understand that architecture these days is also something that is created for the social media and for the economy that are related to it. When we search for the hashtag dream home, we can find over almost like 11 million of posts with this hashtag on Instagram. Another very popular platform that allows to empower people to imagine like different ways of living and different ways of domestic architecture is Pinterest, which is something that for many architects might consider like incredibly dangerous when the client arrives to the meeting with this Pinterest board of everything that they want in their house, and most of it doesn't make much sense. But it's nevertheless is a tool, is a digital tool that can empower people to explore alternative ways of living. And Pinterest itself, over the lockdown, it was one of the platforms that has a largest increase in terms of users, like adding like over 100 million users over that period. But social media itself, even if it had the power to connect us and to project like different ways of living at these two platforms I mentioned. It can also have like many other dark side or like Black Mirror sides. This is a project I curated with Justin McGurk for the Design Museum in 2016 for an exhibition called Fear and Love. And it's a project by Andrea Hake and the Office for Political Innovation called Intimate Strangers. And we were presented as a media installation with different screens in a room where people could like delve deeper into the dating social app Grindr, which is targeted for the LGBT community. And in this installation, well, you could see not only like the possibility that this platform can offer and how it has evolved and have been designed as an interface, but also it was like presenting a much darker side of it, which is how this app is being used in certain countries where homosexual practices are banned and punished, to get access and to locate people that are using the app. And in some cases that has led into like not only tracking, but also harassing and arresting gay men in different countries. And also it has, in the same way that it's an app that has allowed to create this urbanism, virtual urbanism, where people can like interact with themselves and then like meet in real life. And people can become whoever they want to be. It's also like a place where like many people have been harassed because they have alter egos in the app. And then like in the case of this user, it was a priest and it was like harassing in the real life in the physical world. Another technology that is incredibly important for architecture, especially now that it's far more accessible than ever before, is virtual reality and augmented reality. And this is one of the first patents for virtual reality goggles from 1960. Since then until today, now we can get high quality virtual reality headset for around like 300 pounds, which have made this technology far more accessible than ever before, and opening the opportunity to explore virtual architecture and in the case of augmented reality, how the virtual architecture can interact with the physical world in a more direct way. Perhaps something that is more interesting, given the limitations that virtual reality and augmented reality have, in the sense that you can only like see or listen, it's the possibility that these virtual technologies can offer in the near future. This is one of the objects that will be included in the exhibition I'm curating now for the Museum of the Future, which is a haptic suit that allows to like also enhance the rest of our body and bring a tactile experience to the virtual world, an experience that is like through this suit and also through this glove, so you can sense the object that, for example, you are handling in the virtual world, and it has like some electrical input that are going directly into your body. Augmented reality is something that it's already being used in architecture. And in particular in the building sites. This is a project I curated for the exhibition Invisible Landscape at the Royal Academy of Arts. It's a project titled Real Virtuality by Jill Retzin Architecture, together with the Bartlett School of Architecture. And in this project, what you see here is the physical manifestation of a virtual model that was conquering, and it was using parameters to grow endlessly in the virtual space, and that here it will materialize only like a capsule or like a small portion of this model. For the assembly of the structure, Jill's use HoloLens, which is a device for an augmented reality headset that allow to see on real life and then in the physical world, like a virtual reality, like adding information to it, which was particularly relevant for the assembly of the the sculpture. And these are also like some other fragments that were located in other areas of the museum, like trying to show this idea that it was like part of a virtual model, and they were like exactly placed in where the virtual model were like telling us that they should be located, which in some cases it was like a very random, and it like had like some impact on the flow of visitors. Here you can see a video of how it was assembled. So the structure was composed by different models, each one of them with a specific shape that could be assembled only in a specific position. And there were like someone on the floor that were like giving instructions through what Johan in this case was like seeing through his Googles, which is an interesting way. This is another project using, in this case, 3D printing. And 3D printing applied to, 3D printing is something that at the moment, most of the samples that we have seen applied to architecture are for either like building very quick structures. We've all seen like videos of like a house that have been built in like 24 hours somewhere in China. But in most of the cases, they're like either using concrete with certain resins that allow for like the malleability of the material and to be printed. And in some other cases, where we see like a resin. In all of them, like what is not question of this technology, the material that is being used. Now there is new ways of like 3D printing, and in particular the 3D printing sand, which is something that allows for circular materials to be broken down. And this wall in particular that we are building for the new exhibition at the Museum of the Future, it's which is a project by Barry Ward from the Bartlett School of Architecture too, can be like broken down and reprinted after use, which allow also like to enable ideas or an ecological thinking into these advanced technologies. Here you can see a video of how it is printed on sand. So basically, it's removing the sand from a block and then like almost like carving it, and then like all the sand that you see like being like dusted off. Another technology that virtual technology in this case that allow us to explore alternative realities, or in this case, I would say like it's a physical reality, something that is important when we want to raise awareness about like certain environment that perhaps might be in danger due to the impact of climate change. This is a project by a ScanLab project that was also part of Invisible Landscapes. And in this project, the ScanLab, what they did, it was like traveling to Yosemite Valley in California, inspired by Muybridge, who was a photographer, who had like very pioneering photography techniques for photographing landscapes. They traveled there with these large-scale terrestrial laser scanners, and what they created was like this 3D data made out of like all the details that they were finding there, like natural details, and then and creating like the virtual landscape that we could like inhabit remotely. This is a video of like the kind of like mesmerizing and again an almost sublime view of the Yosemite Valley through the eyes of this terrestrial laser scanner. And one of the concepts that over the last months we've seen over and over again is the idea of the metaverse. The metaverse, it's something that is very difficult to define. It will be like trying to, as if we will be in this 1970s, trying to define what the internet is. At that moment, there was a technology that people knew that it was going to have a massive impact on society and allowing to communicate and like to share information in a way never seen before, but very vaguely they could like imagine the possibility that it will have today and like how we are using it today. So the metaverse, it could be like, when we are talking about the metaverse, it would be pretty much the same. We don't really know what are the possibilities that it can bring, and in particular for architecture, like that it can bring to us. This is one of the descriptions that I think is more vague and more accurate at the same time of the metaverse. It's a persistent 3D virtual world, a network of interconnected experiences and devices, tools and infrastructure far beyond mere virtual reality. That is something that I consider incredibly important, because when we are talking about the virtual reality or virtual worlds or virtual environments, often like we detach them from the physical reality. And there is like this transit of information between the physical and the real world, and well, the physical and the virtual world, like what is real and what is not. Everything is real, everything is virtual, and everything is physical. And in particular, like the virtual world, like have a very physical impact that I will explore a little bit later. Perhaps when we try to imagine the possibilities of the metaverse, we come with like references from movies, and science fiction movies. That is one of the most obvious and direct ways. One of the films that to me has inspired me like more and opened more questions about like the role of technology in the last years, it was Ready Player One by Steven Spielberg, which was released in 2018. In case you haven't seen it, like I highly recommend it to see it, where you can see already that the main character in the film is wearing the virtual reality headset, but at the same time wearing this haptic suit with globes that allow him to inhabit the oasis, which is this virtual world, like an entire world, not only a city, like a compilation of many scenarios, some of them like very rooted into like the physical reality that we live in today in the city, but some others that are very far and very distant, and that they could be only imagined in these virtual worlds. When we are when referring to movies, I think it's always good to like go back to Blade Runner, which was released in 1982, but it was set in 2019. When we look at like the urban environment that, for example, Blade Runner presented almost like, well, 40 years ago, they are very far from the reality that we are living today. Some things can be actually very accurate in terms of like the impact that climate change is having, but in terms of like the reliance on technology, it's quite far from the possibility that it's promising us. So this is why I say like the future isn't always what we were promised, and we need to be and we cannot over rely on the technology to like achieve all our expectations and addressing the challenges that we have to address today as a society. Especially when we see some of these news. For example, it was from a month ago, when Facebook started and Mark Zuckerberg started talking about the possibilities of Meta and the metaverse, and when we see that there is already like issues coming from that metaverse, that it's promised as a place of a very democratic platform where people will be able to interact in ways that they have never seen before. But obviously, like that comes with issue that we will need to address today, and how those spaces are going to be regulated in the future in the same way that it happened with physical cities. And something that is also like important to be aware of is about the economical possibility that this metaverse can bring. Obviously, that is something that has been very interesting for many companies who are already investing in this metaverse and in the different platforms that are at the moment available. And you can see, like, when the money is there, like this kind of technology is gonna grow exponentially over the next years. But it's about like what we do again with this technology, that it will can make a significant change. And there is a lot of like monetization of the metaverse at the moment, and speculation around it, but that is something that is not new. We've over the last 20 years, there's been like different like game platforms, like Second Life or The Sims or Minecraft, that are already offering the users the possibility to buy land, to design their own homes, and to take and to get some properties in these walls. These are the Linden homes. The Linden home were introduced first in Second Life in 2010, and the second generation of Linden homes it was available in 2019. Here you can see the a sample of the second generation Linden homes. As you can see, like, there was in terms of architecture, it going through very traditional very traditional type of architecture, not opening like the kind of possibility that the virtual world can embrace for architecture, and the design and literal translation of houses that we could find in other in the physical world. So like, not like maximizing the potential that it could have. And here in Second Life, already like prices are ranging between like these houses are only available for premium players, and range between like $4 to $175 per month.
So what do most people think of when they hear Linden homes?
Yeah, this is the advertisement that they have for the new Linden homes.
Maybe unappealing. Well, maybe this will change their minds. This is the new Linden homes. Customizable, high level of detail homes on individual lots in a planned community environment. Linden homes will be nearly 400 regions on the new Belisaria continent, with plans to expand. The first stage release of 136 regions includes 2 themes. Traditional, styled after mid-20th century starter homes, and houseboats, moored in slips with an area set aside for the owner's own drivable watercraft. House styles are selectable for each parcel and customizable from control menus built into the house. Navigable seas, quiet neighborhoods, bustling marinas, mountain peaks, lazy rivers, rolling hills, green forests, sandy beaches. Belisaria is a continent with a variety of biomes and community areas for residents to explore and enjoy. It's not just a place to park yourself in a box and close off the world. It's a place to find your little corner of a vast and continuously expanding community. Are you ready?
Yeah, as you can see, like the language that is being used here to sell the new Linden homes, it's very close to like the one that we can find in real estate agencies. Even like this picture, it is showing like a traditional couple like acquiring like their first home. what are the questions that this is raising are multiple, and this is something that we can discuss later. In terms of like the speculation that the real estate speculation that the metaverse and the question that is opening, something that it's important to refer to is obviously the NFT, the non-fungible tokens based on blockchain technology. It was very recently in 2021 when the first digital home was sold for the metaverse platform Superworld. It was a house that it was like sold for over $500,000, and the design is now listed for over $2.5 million. That same design, it was designed by Krista King Studio. It included a song produced by Jeff Shredder from the band Smashing Pumpkins. Whoever was the buyer of this home, the digital model, which again, from an architectural point of view, it's not like addressing or like questioning or challenging like the possibility that it can have as a spatial experience. And the buyer of the Mars house will get it basically a digital model, and then an NFT, which will be an authentication certificate that is secure through blockchain. And that is the main difference. It's like you get the ownership of like this edition of the house. The digital model itself, it can be edited and replicated in different ways, and it will become a completely different NFT. So the question of ownership and like authorship are also like at the very core of the application of architecture and in the NFT world. This is a video of the house, which comes with this experience, like audio experience connected to. As you can see from an architectural point of view or architectural design point of view, it's extremely basic, only with like this canopy, floating canopy, and like a color that are changing according to the music. In Superworld, the platform where this house was sold, you can also like find many other architectural icons that can be acquired through at very different prices, from the Eiffel Tower to the Mont Saint-Michel or the Taj Mahal. And one of the largest platforms at the moment is the Decentraland, which is based on blockchain technology. Many companies are already investing in this platform, seeing an opportunity to attract new customers. One of them is Sotheby's, the auction house, which was one of the first ones to start selling NFTs, and obviously this is a very interesting context for them to expanding their market. At the moment I'm doing the lecture, the parcel in the Decentraland, in one of the highest trafficked virtual districts, is around $10,000 for a parcel or a plot that is around like 60 meters by 60 meters. But blockchain technology is something that it can be used in many different ways, and it can, even if it has like an environmental impact, that is very important to always keep in mind, given that the energy consumption that is attached to like these thousands of transactions that secure any process. It can be used for many other purposes beyond just like pure speculation in the art or digital art NFTs. One of the uses that I find more interesting is when it can like question or open like new opportunities for ownership. And that is what Dark Matter Labs are currently exploring in this project, the Free House, that they are developing for the exhibition Tomorrow Today at the Museum of the Future, where they are presenting a house that can become a piece of local civic infrastructure enhanced by bioeconomy and distributed digital technologies, allowing for a self-owned house. So basically what you sign as a user is a contract that you make sure that you are taking care of the house and the house owns itself. So you are only becoming a user of the house through this system. That is something that in a few weeks I will be able to explain in more detail. It will be an installation that you can explore through augmented reality, through tablets or mobile devices, where you could get automatically information that is always updated of your home. And we can put the value on the quality of the home and the impact that will have on our health, rather than on the speculation that might come related to the land where it's built. And I was questioning or raising questions about the possibility that the virtual spaces and virtual architecture can bring for spatial experience. And again, that is something that it started being explored by many architects. I'm only going to feature one of the projects that I found more interesting, and is this project by Asymptote for a virtual museum for the Guggenheim, where they created this loop experience, which at the time, the technology or to explore, to navigate this architecture, it was very limited. Probably they will be redoing this project today, it will become something totally different, and then we can see the possibility that it can have. But yeah, it was something that was opening many opportunities to explore cultural institutions and their collections through virtual reality. And these are just some of the drafts of the sketches for the design. And this is another project that they also developed for a virtual trading floor, where people could look at the stock exchange in real life in this virtual space. Which is something that is probably perhaps very related to the vision that Mark Zuckerberg has of the metaverse, where people could see live data and exchange ideas in real time. This is a picture that always had captured my attention, and where Mark Zuckerberg walking into the stage in a conference about virtual reality in 2016, and everybody was wearing virtual headset, and no one noticed that he was walking to the stage. Which is it can show you also the problem that it can virtual reality and virtual technologies can have for alienating us from others, as Marx mentioned in his Strange Labor manuscript. These are some of the platforms in metaverse that are currently more popular and currently being developed and exploring the possibility that they can have. Obviously, Microsoft and Facebook are very interested on exploring the possibility that that's given also the speculation, the economical speculation that can be behind them. And something that they have identified, the importance of building this interaction with other people, an interaction that in most of the cases is with this kind of cartoonish versions of real people. And over the last couple of years, since the lockdown started, we've all attended multiple events on Zoom, like this one, where the possibilities of interacting between us are very limited. In 2020, I was commissioned to organize a conference that it was basically initially it was supposed to happen in Barcelona. Because of the lockdown, it had to be turned into a virtual format. And looking at what it was happening and everybody organizing lectures on Zoom, and after discussing with Space Popular, who is a group of architects led by Lara Lesmes and Frederick Helber, we were discussing what were the point of organizing these Zoom lectures if we cannot have a spatial experience and where we could contribute something from from an architectural point of view to that experience. So we started discussing about like how to turn this into a virtual platform using one of the many metaverse platforms that are available in, and we decided to create a stage where like all the events as part of the conference, all the lectures and the debates could be held. We chose Mozilla Hubs for hosting this conference, which was part of the Arquea Festival. It's a Spanish foundation for the promotion of architecture. And we created this mini wall where people could like join as an avatar. And in Mozilla Hub, which is an open source platform, they could like not only attend the events in this central stage, which was inspired by the architecture of Barcelona, where originally the festival was supposed to happen, but also they could like discuss with each other, comment, and having like this small chat that often you have in between an event or like after or before an event, which is perhaps like one of the social reasons why we in most of the cases we attend to these architecture lectures. It's also like for expanding the discussion later on and before the event. These are some pictures of the event where also like there was a ceremony where like students were awarded with a scholarship. And in addition to the main stage where the events were held, there was a series of exhibitions. Each one of them was designed in a completely different way. And we had to like work really carefully on not only on the lighting and the design of the spaces, but also like the way people were navigating those spaces. So we can create a curatorial vision behind this. Everything was linear and in every gallery. And you could see like different projects that have been selected for the festival and then expanding on information on them and the authors. Yeah, the last room in of the festival was this screening room where we were premiering a documentary about young practices in Barcelona. Yeah, this is something that obviously for us it was like, and it got like lots of like media attention because it was like for the first time, it was the first architecture festival that was held in a virtual reality platform that you could like navigate through your laptop or through virtual reality headsets. And it was very interesting, in particular when we were looking at other things that were happening in other parts of the world. For example, it was at that time when South Korea started like discussing like the possibility of creating an untaxed society. So putting regulations for avoiding contact and for like all the like regular paperwork that you might have to do in the council or in whatever public office that could be developed contactless. And that later on, a few months ago, was Seoul also announced that they wanted to create the first metaverse to host all their municipal offices, which is opening lots of possibilities, and architects should be aware of like the possibility that can bring to them. So it's not like left in the hands of like video game designers or like graphic designers who know how to program virtual reality.
The internet. That land having all that is appropriate. The oracle. He was no smarter child, no fear, no terror. Yes, a person is alive, but so is a cell.
And this is a video that was also included, we commissioned together with Nowness to Rick Farrell, called Cathedrals, where we were imagining like a very dystopian vision of cities and how there are like Rick Farrell was a student at the SciArc in California. And he was like exploring like this dystopian future that can only like be imagined through virtual reality and virtual experiences, opening the possibility of like how as architect we can like reconsider the power that we can have in designing and creating the world and discussing wider concepts and ideas. This is also the work that Liam Yang does. These are a couple of stills from his project Planet City, which will be in a different format in a new film edited for the exhibition Tomorrow Today, and that is opening in a few weeks, where he like speculating about how our city might look in 2015, 30 years, and how we will have to be feed at that time in 30 years a 10 billion population, and how like the production of food might need to be transformed and perhaps integrated within the grid of our cities. It's using these virtual scenarios to imagine the possibilities of our cities and how they can be transformed and adapted to the needs that we will have in the future, and reconsidering also like the environmental impact that they might have. And it's looking at this environmental impact where virtual technologies can also like be incredibly helpful. In this case, this is a project by Alexandra Daisy Ginsberg that was presented at the exhibition Eco-Visionary, where she reproduced this rhino, which is a virtual reproduction of the last white rhino, which unfortunately died, I think, a couple of years ago, becoming leaving only like 2 females, meaning that this species is extinct. And it's also like related to, this is also like this ecological awareness is also like very important, and it's something that the artist Jacob Kutz Stensen is also discussing in his work, where he invites us to, for example, in this project, the deep listener, to walk through Hyde Park, having a wider awareness of the species that are part of this ecosystem, and speculating about like the different realities that might be created in a virtual world. This is, whoops, I think that video is not working. So we move. And when we talk about like the ecological impact and of virtual technology, we need to look at like the physical impact that these technologies have, and how behind the virtual world there is a very physical reality that sometimes we are not fully aware of. This is a picture of a data farm, of a server farm, which is an architecture completely designed for giving shelter to non-humans and to machines. This is another picture of this mesmerizing kind of landscape that are being created for machines. And this is another one that it's for Bitcoin farming, something that all these NFTs and like virtual technologies and metaverse are relying on. And they have, as I mentioned earlier, a very physical impact, not only through the construction of this, but also like through the energy that it's necessary for powering these facilities, which often are located in countries like Iceland, where that they are very cold, or in Canada or Alaska, because this way the need to power and to cooling down the facilities, it will be lower, or in the case of Bitcoin, in areas where there is like Bitcoin farmers, and the labor is much cheaper, like Russia, remote areas of Russia or China. And when talking about like this ecological impact, and I'm about to finish, I would like to like show you this video when Elon Musk in 2015 introduced Tesla Energy as the kind of savior of all our problems and climate change.
All right, welcome everyone to basically the announcement of Tesla Energy. All right. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is about a fundamental transformation of how the world works, about how energy is delivered across Earth. This is how it is today. It's pretty bad. So that sucks, exactly.
And yeah, here, like arriving to the States as almost like a celebrity, like Elon Musk presenting Tesla Energy, bringing the solution to like all the energy issues that we might be facing in the future. What he didn't explain in this video is the reality behind Tesla. Tesla is not the solution to all our problems. It's a technology that that is more like a sticky plaster than a solution. Unknown fields in this project that was also presented as part of Eco Visionaries. They look at like the landscape that lithium batteries, which is the kind of battery that Tesla Energy is relying on, has on natural landscape. Lithium is extracted from salt, and these are like some of the massive plantation. I think in this case it was in Chile or Bolivia, where like the larger reserves of lithium are located. And they are extracting this lithium, which is a rare mineral from the earth, which is something that obviously has a massive environmental impact. And in the future, if we continue relying on these lithium batteries, it is possible that we will need to extract at least 3/4 of the territory of Bolivia, which not only have a massive environmental impact, but also like social impact in the people that are living out of these territories. Today, and this is the conclusion, atmospheric CO2 levels exceed 470 parts per million, which is 50% higher than before the first industrial revolution. These CO2 emissions or greenhouse gas emissions are at the moment like 1.4% dedicated to information and communication technology and 2% to data centers. Just as a reference, by 2021, at least 13 years of typical household electricity consumed per mine coin, per Bitcoin. We can tell you about the massive the energy demand that this alternative currency can have. By 2030, only in 8 years, the atmospheric levels are expected to be 74% higher than before the first industrial revolution. And the data centers, for example, are gonna raise their global greenhouse emissions 8 times than today, reaching like 17%, something that is very drastic and something that we will be like very aware of when we are discussing about whether our future is relying on virtual technologies and virtual worlds. We live in a rendered reality shaped by global complexity that we can barely understand, empathize with, or respond to. But it is important that architecture can support this transition from speculation to realization to build a more optimistic future. And ultimately, it's up to governments, corporations, and every one of us to make a change. So I hope that this lecture inspires some of you to try to make a change in different ways. Now let's move into the last slide, which is this very iconic picture, The Garden of Early Delight by Hieronymus Bosch, where we can like look at like a future, a very dystopian view of the future that hopefully won't be like the future that we are facing. And I also like this picture, which is when the triptych is closed and it's like kind of like encapsulated in this sphere that many of you probably haven't seen, and because it's always presented open, this painting. And I think like it had like lots of metaphor with the reality that we are living today. In this case, Bosch were like kind of encapsulating the wall with this sphere, which was protected by God here in the corner. And now we are relying on a future that it's we have a future that is relying on virtual technology, and which is promising what the future of architecture will be. But it's important that we are making sure that those people that are protecting the world are not those who have like which are corporations like Facebook and Tesla, to try to find the solution for the challenges that we are facing today and that we might face in the future. And that is all from me.
Thank you very much for that whirlwind tour.
Far over the time that we were supposed to be.
That's okay. That's okay. No, we will continue and have time for questions. You know, extraordinary range of projects you showed and questions you asked, and a kind of sense of so many of the sort of fundamental things that we take for granted in the physical world being kind of thrown up into the air by this sort of transition, as you described it, to the virtual or the metaverse. So if you have a question that you'd like to ask Gonzalo, please put it in the chat and we will attempt to come to you directly to ask your question. But I will ask the first question, if I may, which is kind of, in a way, given the kind of the very big themes that you've been dealing with, a kind of it may seem a relatively slight question to ask, but I interestingly, just today I was scrolling through Twitter and saw an advert for the Facebook Horizon World, which is a kind of bizarre thing, because in a sense it's talking hugely ambitiously about technology, yet the manifestation of it seems so kind of limited. And as you pointed out, it kind of exists in this kind of cartoonish versions of real people. And I'm kind of curious about those. I mean, there's a sense that Mark Zuckerberg in real life actually looks like one of these cartoons. So I wonder how much of it's kind of personally determined by him. But I kind of more broadly, I think, is the choice of that particular aesthetic on the part of Facebook or now Meta or other companies, is it a deliberate thing? And if it is, why? And if it's not, then, you know, what is going on? Are they bereft of interesting designers who can conjure the new approaches to aesthetics that surely these, as they describe these transformative technologies, surely demand?
No, I mean, like I had the same thoughts every single time. Well, it was like a few weeks ago when like Zuckerberg was like presenting the Meta and Horizon. It's something that I think is like very strategic from a communication or PR point of view, just to make everything like very friendly and very accessible to everyone. And also like it's showing like the uncertainty that they are facing, you know, like they don't want to present something that is more complex because they don't know what it's gonna be in the near future. So this is the way of like basically like creating an ad compared to like what it will be in a few years, that it makes people like think that they can like navigate those worlds in a very easy way, that you don't need to be like a teenager, like, well, I say teenager because they are like the one that know more about like the metaverse than any one of us, because they've grown up in this kind of social media world. And I think it just those aesthetics are very deliberate, and they just want to present this kind of like friendly world where that everyone can navigate and it's very easy and accessible. But what I feel like more inspired from is the kind of platforms that are for gaming, not the one that are like rooted in like social interaction, but the one that are putting first like the gaming experience, where you can like see that, for example, like the avatars are like far more elaborated, like, and the way that you can customize them, it's far more advanced. And even like the scenario that you are inhabiting, and there is like lots of possibility there for architects. And the very few examples that we have seen from architects, like navigating these virtual worlds, are incredibly poor. Because the architects still, I think, like the main problem is that they don't know how to like collaborate with coders, which are the ones that facilitate this. Like the coder is the new building worker. So you need to like work with them to like see how your ideas and the way like that you are shaping spaces can be actually materialized in each one of these platforms. One of the challenges that, for example, we faced when I was working with Space Popular on designing this festival, it was like they had like amazing idea, but the moment when they were like putting them in this in Mozilla Hubs, in this open source platform, they have to start like reducing like the quality of the architecture, not the quality, I would say like the finishings. For example, like we need to like prioritize like using like certain textures for the surfaces against others, or like the way you were navigating, it had to be linear or like moving on very specific directions, because it wasn't possible to create like a full three-dimensional or 360 experience. And the moment that they realized of that, it was the moment when they were like working with a VR coder. Because before it was all like very beautiful drawings and very beautiful ideas, but at the moment when you start materializing them, when you see like the reality of that. In the same way that as I mentioned at the beginning, like a client arrived with like wonderful idea that they have found on Instagram or on Pinterest, and when they face the reality and they go to the architect and to the building worker or the contractor, they realize that it's completely out of budget or it's something that they cannot materialize. So it went like expectation meet reality, I guess.
So there's a kind of value engineering.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like the only thing is like we need to like architects need to like learn how to operate with these new engineers.
Okay, so I've gone from, I guess, what I kind of teed up as being a kind of relatively trivial question, although maybe the answer perhaps proved that it wasn't, to very grand big question, which kind of touches on something you mentioned at the end of your talk, but that idea of the role of architecture and the role of architects. You said that architects can't just leave this to game designers, to graphic designers, which I guess is partly about self-interest. Architects won't exist in the same way or have the same importance, even if it is, a pale reflection of what it used to be, if they don't get involved in these technologies. But I think there was also a kind of more positive, generative possibility that you suggested of architects actually kind of navigating this, helping to navigate this transition for us, and ensuring that we don't end up in that, we don't veer too much towards the darker side of that Hieronymus Bosch vision, but maybe at least stay in the middle, or who knows, veered more towards the a slightly more utopian path. I mean, the question is how does that happen? How can architects begin to grapple with these questions if, as you say, that thing about working with a coder is still alien to, I would imagine, 99.9% of architects working today?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The thing is that if we look at the city that we are like walking through on a daily basis, like many of the spaces that we are inhabiting are not designed by architects. If we go to a shopping center, often like there is no minimum intervention of architect there, or you go to a tube station and there are like many buildings that they are like their design is led by engineers and by other professionals. So in the same way, I think it will happen in the virtual world. We will find like very good architectural examples that perhaps are led by architects. In some other cases, there will be other that will be like led by video game designers or other type of designers that know how to design in this world. And I think like like when I'm teaching at Central St. Martin's, and when I see like the results or like the students, in many cases, like the proposal that they have, in many cases they cannot be built they won't be built in the physical world, but the ideas are still there. So I think like there is a lot of possibility, and like there is certain training that is like very valid for architects to like extrapolate and move into the virtual world. And it's like how like teaching and education, architectural education, is adapting also like and opening the doors for like this for architects to work in these virtual worlds, which is something that is not happening yet, and it's yet to happen. There is only like very few schools in the world that are already offering a program that is purely dedicated to it. For example, Pay Popular are now teaching in LA in one of these courses, or at the SciArc, they are like teaching this. But there is very few schools, in particular in the UK, I would say like there is none that is teaching people how to like collaborate, for example, with a coder, which is something that is going to be incredibly important in the future for their professional practice. I think there is a question from Marin.
There is. Marin, wherever you are, we should be able to unmute you and you'll be able to ask a question yourself.
Yeah, Marin, do you want to make the question yourself?
Hi,
Hi, Marin.
Nice
Hi, very good
to see you there. And yeah, I really enjoyed your talk, especially because it touches upon this, you know, the discourse of, you know, the interface between the virtual and actual. And of course, you know, the virtual ecology where, you know, desires manifest and is as actual as the physical world. And it seemed to me that the metaverse that you know, described could render the virtual more real than the actual to the user and the community. So, you know, obviously, as, you know, a maker of the physical world, we architects and designers, we wonder, are there any challenges in curating this kind of sensitive relationship? Because you could flip it in a way that actually the virtual is more real than the actual. You know,
well, it is more real and it more unreal. I mean, like it depends on how we define the real. No, I mean, like the reality, like at the moment to navigate the metaverse, we have like very limited tools. It can be either through your laptop, which is on a screen, in which case you only have like a visual and an audio input. Or it can be if you put like VR headset, it can become more spatial, and then it like even with like this haptic suit, you can like translate that experience into like a tactile one that you feel in your body. So the technology is not there to make it like a full experience in the same way that we can like feel a full experience in the physical world. And we are still like building the path towards that. And it's until the technology is not there, and most importantly, perhaps, that is accessible to everyone, that it can have a real impact on defining like experiences that can be like equivalent in the sense, in the way that they are enhancing more senses. That the metaverse will become an equivalent reality to the physical reality, I would say. But there is something that many people might argue and saying that they will be like two parallel realities, and we cannot just take the same of the physical world into in the virtual world. But I would say like even like the interaction with people is totally different. It allows to like be whoever you want and to create your avatar and to present yourself in the way you want, which is what we are already doing in social media. But on the other hand, it can come with like many other constraints that technology will need to catch up in order to all these ambitions that are put into the metaverse can be achieved, I would say.
Thank you, Gonzalo. Thank you.
No worries. Yeah, there is another question, Owen, about like whether it's necessary to learn coding in order to create an architectural things in the metaverse. Absolutely not. There is like many platforms. I mentioned just a few of them in the presentation that are very accessible to everyone, and they can like, you can design things there that are in a very easy way. Mozilla Hubs is one of them, but obviously they have their limitation. The moment you want to create like more complex architectures in the virtual world is when you start like needing like a more like server capacity and like more skills to operate. And it's not about like learning coding. I think like the future is about collaboration. We always, I think like architects always say that, but not always do that. and it's about learning how to collaborate with them, which is a skill that needs to be learned, and it should be something that is led independently or like through the program in the schools, I guess.
Do we have any further?
I don't see any more questions, but I don't know, like anyone, people are very shy or yeah.
Last call for some more questions from the chat. I have a few. I mean, you started talking about alienation, which I think is a really interesting way of thinking about this, because I think one of the effects of social media has been to kind of exacerbate alienation. And, you know, I think one of the questions over it is the extent to which the technology itself is neutral or not. Is it merely reflecting society to itself, or is it the structures of those technologies? Is that exacerbating, you know, existing divisions? And I think perhaps the answer is increasingly looking like it's towards the latter. There is some, you know, something kind of inherent about how social media functions, which is to do with the anonymity, it's to do with the kind of limited forms of expression, all those kinds of things, that ensures that arguments very quickly develop. And that makes me kind of think, well, how's that going to manifest in the metaverse, or the group of technologies that constitute the metaverse? Is anything in them different to where we are with social media, or is it just going to get even worse? And I can see it from both sides in a way, but I was really interested in if you kind of go along with my kind of characterization, how do you see these kind of two directions, or is it two directions?
Yeah, I mean, like what I really mentioned in the lecture, like there is technology never neutral. It's about how you use it, and in particular when people are creating these walls, it's there is a regulation that needs to be put in place. We've seen like the first case of harassment in the metaverse. And there is like many other questions that are perhaps more related to the speculation of this wall, that need to be, they need regulation, and they need to like be taken care of. And that is something that at the moment is not happening. I mean, like we've seen that obviously like Facebook, for example, are targeting toward like creating this platform that is a social platform where it's not alienating, but it's a way where you can like interact with others and socialize and like meet other people. But there will be a moment that if more users start making use of it, and like we know like how many trolls can jump into a Zoom call and change your screen into like a porn site or whatever. That can happen obviously in the metaverse, and we saw on the power that Facebook and bots can have even in like political elections, and there is something through Cambridge Analytics and all these issues that have arisen over the last years. And the metaverse is only going to be another platform for people to alter and to play with, and like to potentially very damaging in certain ways. But it's about how we use them and how it regulated and how it is protected to create like the democratic space that the virtual has always promised us, I would say.
I think we've run over, so we will draw things to a close there. But this is a conversation that, you know, I can.
This is just the beginning of many conversations. I mean, like this was an introduction to the metaverse.
Absolutely. So you know, very much the start of something. And thank you, Gonzalo, for I think ensuring that conversation starts from a kind of very informed position, and bringing to the fore the sort of the really fundamental questions that these technologies pose to us and to architecture in particular. So thank you very much. We pick up the series again next Wednesday with our very own Ruth Morrow, who is Professor of Biological Architecture at Newcastle University, where she is also head of School X, which is a new interdisciplinary school. Ruth will be talking on designing the material. So please do join us then.